Today, you are going to get a front row seat to the short but impactful Springbok career of Dan Van Zyl. Dan, welcome to Front Row Rugby.
Thanks a lot, man, and thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, before we begin our interview, let's take a quick look at today's trivia question. In 2016, Alistair Coetzee became Springbok coach. Who did he appoint as his first captain? Now, if you know the answer to the question, you can put it in the comment section down below, and we'll also find out if Dan knows the answer, but we'll do that at the end of our conversation. Dan, I would like to go back to 1997. That's when you were in the Springbok squad on that end-of-year tour with Nick Mallett as the Springbok coach, but you only made your test debut in 2000. It took 3 years to get there. How frustrating was that period for you?
Oh, look, it was enjoyable, but then at the same time frustrating as well, you know. But as you say, but in 1997, the Springboks went through, under Mallett, through a very successful time where I think we had 17 test match wins in a row and so on. So it was difficult to break into the team. Joost Van Der Westhuizen, obviously legend. It's his birthday today, I think, and like he obviously played a lot, and then Werner Swanepoel, also a very good scrumhalf, was second, and me and Smiley always fought out for the second or third spot. So frustrating, yes, but also very privileged to have toured South Africa in 97 and then again in 2000 when I was lucky enough to get my cap.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I was looking at the team sheets and I've got you on the bench in at least 5 test matches between 97 and 2000 without actually coming on. And I know that at the time, tactical substitutions had already become a thing. Bobby Skinstad and Ollie Leroux, probably the most famous of those impact subs, as we called them in those early days. Did you think maybe, hey, come on, can I at least get on here for a minute or two?
Look, definitely, and not to go against your stats, and I'm myself not sure. I have to check back, but I think I was on the bench for 10 or 11 test matches, and then captained the Midweek team. 97 was the first time when we played England, we played Scotland, we played Italy, Parc de France, France, the last test match in Parc de France, where I think we won 52-10, and it was frustrating not getting on in even those big wins, and then I had to wait another 3 years after that. Missed out on the 99 World Cup, although I was on a what do they call it, not a substitute bench, but if somebody got injured, a standby on the standby group, and you train as hard as the guys in the team because if somebody gets injured, you've got to be ready to go. But then in 2000, I benched against Canada and England in the inland tour. And then at the end of the year on the European tour, then got my chance. So, look, people will say, one cap wonder, or there's a lot of phrases that people will use, but I wouldn't trade that for the world. But substitutes, I think now, these days, I could have probably played in quite a few more test matches, but back in those days, you really only went on when injured, I suppose.
We'll come to your test debut in a moment, but you touched on it there, those midweek games on the 97 tour, and they were still around 98, and probably by around 2000, they were fading away a little bit. It's not something that we see anymore today. For our younger viewers, can you explain what those midweek games were all about?
Yeah, look, the last ones that I was involved with, it was actually quite special in a sense, and there was always a phrase when the test match team gets picked or so on, guys will wink at each other and die span is nog nie gekies nie, in Afrikaans. So that the coach says everybody on tour has got a chance. But in reality, one thing about sports people at that level, I think you've got a good self-awareness and where you sit in the pecking order and so on. So those midweek games was really there to, I guess, prepare people for test match rugby, but also at a higher level than what Super Rugby or so on offered. So in 2000, for instance, we started in Argentina and the midweek team would have played on the Wednesday in Buenos Aires. The test team then played on the Saturday. While the test team was playing, the midweek team already flew out to Ireland on the Tuesday night, played in Limerick against Ireland A. The test team arrived on the Tuesday, supporting, and then playing test match on the Saturday. Then we played in England against the England counties. Test match on the Saturday. Then we played Wales A following Tuesday. Wales test match. So on those tours, it was, whoever the senior team played on the Saturday, you played against the A team. And on that tour, I was lucky or unlucky. They made me captain of the midweek team. So I can say I was a Springbok captain, although not in an official test match. But against Argentina, me and Felipe Contepomi, who later on became good friends, and he played for Leinster in Ireland, where I coached. We captained the two teams against each other together. I remember Vic Matfield, he became famous and so on, but I got to captain him on a Tuesday night still when he started off. So a lot of good memories about those midweek games. And you were known as the dirt trackers, and on a Friday night under Nick Mallett, actually, he said to us on a Friday night, you guys have to keep the supporters happy. So you've got to go and drink a beer with the supporters, but you can't make any noise because the test team must rest. So it was a very different, probably rugby lifestyle in those days than obviously the professionalism and so on that's currently there.
You mentioned there that you got to captain the team in the middle of the week. How proud of a moment was that?
Look, unbelievable. Like I remember the one in Argentina when Harry Viljoen asked me to captain the team and so on. So that was pretty special. And I'm in Ireland now 22 years, never realized that two of my better mates here actually came to watch the game that I captained the midweek team in Cardiff, because one of their friends, Alan Rollard, it was his first big game that he refereed. He became a World Cup and legend referee in Ireland. So it's amazing how you meet people across the world, through rugby. But no, special, Cardiff, at the Millennium Stadium, roof closed and so on, and you also go through the anthems and just like a proper test match. And for us as dirt trackers, it is a test match because, you want to perform so that the coach can look at you for Saturday.
Speaking of the coach, Harry Viljoen was the man in charge. Ahead of that test match that you did actually get to come onto the field against England at Twickenham, did Harry speak to you in the week leading up?
Yeah, well, you always, got to be careful what you say about coaches, I guess, But yeah, no, Harry actually called me in Argentina and said to me, look, very fond of you as a player. You're the type of scrum half that I want. Joost is obviously a legend in the game and he's in the seat, but the way he saw the game, he wanted me to play scrum half. He said to you, you're going to captain the team against Argentina, and then in the European tour, going to look to give you a couple of test matches. And then, as it turned out, US was probably playing well. The Springboks were playing well, so I only got a small amount of time. But again, when he put me on, I couldn't get rid of the tracksuit and all of that quickly enough. So there's always discussions, and you always would know your role going on, whether it's tactically or whatever the case, a game to be changed. I was probably brought on in that game to use tactical kicking a little bit more. That was probably not one of Joost's strengths, although brilliant rugby player. So yeah, so coaches do that, and I find that being involved in coaching now fascinating as well, is how do you prepare your bench, or how do you pick your bench so that you have guys on the bench that can offer something different from the starting lineup.
Hey, if you're enjoying this video, why not consider becoming a patron? It's my dream, guys, to do this full time, and with a small financial contribution, you can help me realize that dream. The link and the QR code is appearing on your screen right now, and I'll also put it down in the description area for you to go and click on at a later stage if you would like to do so. And by becoming a patron, I promise there will be great benefits for members. Now let's get back to the interview. So Dan, I've had more than 65 former Springboks on the show over the sort of year and a half that I've been doing this now. And I ask all of them to tell me a little bit about the coaches that they played under. And whenever we talk about Harry Viljoen, I hear stories about them seeing him as a visionary, a man who was ahead of his time. But I also hear stories about him running the team like it was a business and the guys were wearing fancy suits and smart shoes. What can you tell us about Harry?
Yeah, look, again, actually it was writer Markgraaff that actually got me in May and playing a game for Western Province. And he said to me, look, you've got to wish that Harry Viljoen becomes the Springbok coach because then you'll be in the side, So, and after the 97 tour leading up to Province success in 98, in 97, winning the Currie Cup, Harry wanted me in the Cape, but I was still under contract in Mpumalanga. So I knew that he liked me as a player. And then very different from other coaches. I was ball boy at Loftus when Harry played for the old defence force still, and when he played for Northern Transvaal. So I would have known his playing history as well. So privilege for me to have met him then when he coached the Springboks. But we each got given a filofax, we each got given a rugby ball, and that rugby ball you needed to have in every team meeting. Your filofax you had to have in every team meeting, very corporate-like, like in team meetings, writing down notes. And he was probably the first coach that really emphasized those sort of things, which now is probably common again. Had a very different vision from other coaches. The first test that we played in Buenos Aires, it was actually Percy Montgomery's first test as a number 10. And Harry told us we're not allowed to kick a ball. And we're in this atmosphere, where it's crazy how the Argentinians go on. It was actually where Boca Juniors, the stadium where they play their soccer and so on. So, and I think it was only in the 78th minute of the game where Charles Marais, hooker, kicked a grubber for Brayton Paulse to score the winning try. But that was Harry's whole vision. He wanted a different style of Springbok rugby with ball in hand. The province team that he coached in 97 was very successful in playing that. And so that for me was a big learning curve. And me as a coach now, I probably took a lot more from Harry's playbook or vision into my own coaching style. So I was a big Harry Viljoen fan, bar that he sort of promised me that I'll play a couple of test matches and then didn't. But look, that was his choice at the time. But he was very businesslike, in meetings, team meetings, and so on. Even that tour was strange in a sense that it was run separately. The test team and the Dirt Trackers Midweek team was run separately. I previously alluded to, they had their own manager, they had their own coaching staff, where at previous Springbok, or 97, my previous experience, Nick Mallett coached both teams, but Harry had different coaches, different strategies, and so on. So very business-like, yes. But a good coach, and I think probably didn't had good success early doors, and then through the history of Springbok rugby, every coach seems to have done that. Pick the wrong guy as captain, and you're no longer the coach.
And we've seen a lot of that over the years indeed. So, Dan, you touched on it a moment ago that you couldn't get your tracksuit off quickly enough against England at Twickenham when you came on for your first Springbok test cap. I'm going to ask you to describe that moment coming onto the field for the Springboks in a test match for the very first time.
Not knowing what you're supposed to do, and you just feel a lot of emotion, and you don't want to let people down. Obviously, family members, yourself, the country. It was, you get this small time frame to make a name for yourself. Hopefully with better things to come. So yeah, in that sense, just a lot of emotion, and then once you're there, just like you jog out on a field beforehand, the nerves are there, but as soon as you get on the field, then it's just normal business, So yeah, but still thinking back a lot to that occasion.
If I've got it right, it was only for 5 minutes, but how proud were you in those 5 minutes?
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a small number of minutes and so on. But you try and be involved in literally everything in those 5 minutes. And when the end whistle goes, you're the only one standing on the pitch, still wanting to play. So um, I think I got penalised though for throwing in a ball crooked in the scrum, which again didn't help the cause. But our forwards were a bit under the pump in that test match. So I tried to make the life of the front rowers a little bit easier. But yeah, look, what can you do in 5 minutes as well? You probably can only bugger it up, thinking back to it now. And I think that's where replacements these days get used so much better, and you actually can have an influence on the game.
I want to ask you if you might remember this, because I had AJ Fenter on this show a few weeks ago, and he told me a story specifically about that test in 2000 at Twickenham, where Andre Markgraaff was the forwards coach, as you will remember. And Harry had promised on AJ that he would also get some time coming onto the field. And AJ came on, the way he remembered it was with about 4 minutes to go. So if that's accurate, then it's about the same period that you came on, right? And then incredibly, just 2 minutes later, Fenter was brought off for Warren Brosnihan to go on, and it was actually Andre Markgraaff that made that call. I wonder if you remember that.
Geez, no, I can't remember that. I was probably too focused on my 5 minutes, that I don't remember that. But I know AJ and myself would have spent a lot of time together on that tour because we were both playing in the midweek game and then subbing in the test matches as well. So as I said to you, we would have played Argentina midweek game, sub for the test on the Saturday. Then we were subbing for the midweek team in Limerick, subbing for the midweek team, for the test match in Dublin, playing the midweek game in England, subbing on the test. So there was a lot of things between Markgraaff and Harry probably also going on that tour behind the scenes, and in one or two Contiki rooms it came to the fore. But so I can, what you say there doesn't surprise me that Markgraaff might have gone over Harry's head at a time.
And obviously, it's something that AJ is more likely to remember given how it directly impacted you. But you've gone and touched on it there, Dan. So I have to ask you the relationship between Markgraaff and Harry. Is there anything that you can tell us?
I think it started off well, but I think both very strong individuals, very good or successful businessmen, different visions of the game. Different game management styles and so on. So I think, what came out on that tour, and that's always now again probably a lesson learned out of that, is doesn't matter who your assistants are or so on, you can't let the players into that, even if you have not the same beliefs and so on. So that was probably the memory on that tour, that there was a few coaches there that didn't believe in the same way of playing or had the same philosophies, and then trying to convince you as a player, that they're doing the right thing. So that was probably the difficulty on that tour. But look, we back in those days, as I say, I think both of them, Harry might have felt a little bit that Markgraaff wanted his job and vice versa. So I can't really comment, but there was, it wasn't always rosy.
I can just imagine. So, Dan, I have to ask you, after that test match, that was the end of your Springbok career, certainly as far as test matches go. How disappointed are you that you didn't get any more opportunities?
At the time, very much so, and still, if I look at players, and you always compare yourself, and if you look at players that's played a lot more test matches and players that's played for South Africa and so on, then probably disappointed, and coming to Ireland, and there's guys like, that's played 90 odd test matches, and I would have rated myself better scrum halves than them. And obviously people can go now and play international rugby elsewhere. But then, as I say, now I've got a young son who's 9 years old, and I've been involved in youth rugby here in Ireland for a long time. And then I realized actually how lucky I was to just be part of it, And at the time, you think, geez, I want to be a 50 test cap player and so on. But I started off just wanting to play for my club team in Pretoria at the time, and just play first team there. And then it develops from there, and then you set your goals higher. So looking back at it now, I think you're very lucky if you make it into a Springbok setup. What number of Springboks have there been, over all the history? So, and for me, whether it was 5 minutes or was whatever it was, very proud to have been one of those that many, every young kid aspires to be. And I was lucky enough to be in that position. So in that sense, probably feel gratitude towards whoever picked me and felt that I was good enough at the time. But yes, I would have loved to have been, played at a World Cup, played 20, 30 test matches, and so on, but look, I was on a lot of tours. I was known as the night captain, so I took that quite seriously, and that probably made up for it.
We can talk a little bit about that later, but something then that a lot of people may not know. I think people my age and those who watched rugby in the late 90s will be familiar with this, but those who were not around necessarily at that stage won't know this. You were also a very talented cricketer, and you actually played provincial rugby and cricket, and you did it at the same time. And at the time, again, late 90s, the rugby and cricket seasons had almost blurred into one another. I mean, for example, Super 12 started in February, which, like, there's still another 2 or 3 months left of the cricket season. I'd be very interested to hear how you were able to manage that.
Look, there's a lot of stories I could tell you. I could keep you busy the whole night, but it was. And again, I just wanted to play sport, and there's stories around contracts and, what guys earned and so on. And they laughed at me when I told them, at the time, what my contract was and so on. But it's never been a priority for me. As I said, I just wanted to play sport. And some people will say I was a better cricketer than a rugby player, but didn't get T20 would have probably been my game, and one-day cricket suited me a lot better than 4-day cricket. But when I got picked the first time, I was actually at a cricket function, and suddenly the names came up on the television screen and so on. So, but the fond memory of that, I would have gone to nets in the morning in Centurion Park, and then from there drive to a rugby training session, and then in the evening, do something different or look at videos and so on. But the bigger, or the one of the fondest memories, but to describe it, was I played in a one-day final against the old Transvaal, the Lions, as it's now. But Ken Rutherford, the New Zealand captain, was the cricket captain then of Transvaal, and we played cricket final on the Wednesday evening against them at the Wanderers, or it wasn't a final, but one of a Standard Bank game, as it was then, on the Wednesday evening at the Bull Ring. And then on the Friday evening, I played for the Bulls against the Hurricanes at Loftus. So it was very much a jiggling act, and in Pretoria, I got away with it and then moved to Cape Town, where I played rugby for Western Province, played cricket for Boland, because the club that I was attached to and still very, very fond of, the club Kraaifontein, a club in Cape Town. They played cricket in the Boland and rugby in Western Province. But then after one season or half a season there, Alan Solomons, who was the coach, he came to me and he said, God created the summer to get reconditioned for rugby, not to play cricket. So that sort of probably changed the view, and then I just stuck with rugby. But then, as I retired in 2001, or forced retirement, through not getting a contract and so on, a lot of decisions needed to be made, and I probably had the opportunity to go back into cricket, to go back to small union Mpumalanga to go and play rugby, but I felt, look, there's probably other ways to fulfill my desire, and then came over to Ireland. Yes, but that was back in the day where you could still do both. I don't think that's possible anymore.
Okay, so how fit were you?
Pretty fit. I would have, again, rightly or wrongly, I wouldn't have seen myself as the most talented guy, but I made up with it with courage and fitness, and in all the fitness tests and stuff. I would have always been at the front. And I remember when Neil de Kock started off his career and biting my ass to get into the team and so on, I would always do the fit, tell him to do the pull-ups, tell him to run the bleep and stuff before I did it, and just so that I do one more than him or two more than him. So but that was just my style. So I was always fit, and actually a lot of credit has to go to a guy called Niels Liebel. I don't know if you might remember him. He was actually under Peter de Villiers' era. He was Springbok strength and conditioning coach, but he was sort of my personal coach. Never asked me a dime for it, but he was involved with Northerns cricket as well. So coming out of a rugby season, I'll go to him for specific cricket fitness and vice versa. And he was a huge influence in my sporting career, fitness-wise at that time.
You're the perfect guy for this next question, Dan. What is your advice to schoolboys, or girls for that matter, who excel in more than one sport?
Keep playing it as long as you can. And I'm a massive believer in that, and I do think early specialization has taken over from back in our days, and I did judo as well as up to 18 years of age. And at a stage, it does get too much and you have to specialize. But I think the multi-sportsmen are the ones that actually come through at the top. And there's a lot of examples like that. And if I just take my adopted country, Ireland, like here, guys will play 3-4 different sports, and in a small population, they all have different attributes and so on that they can bring to the fore. So I'm a big believer in play for as long as you can, play both sports out of a mental aspect as well. I couldn't wait after a rugby season to get back into a cricket change room and to chirp and all of that, because in rugby you just don't have the time, and then vice versa again, and the different change room atmospheres, the different camaraderie and all of that, taken away even the skill sets that's transferable. I do think cricket made me mental mentally tough that I needed for rugby again, and there's things in rugby that helped me a lot in cricket. So and then judo in between. So I would definitely say try keep for as long as you can, play as many sports as you can.
So who was your toughest opponent?
Tough question, and I've often thought about it, and there's been so many, and as we grow older, you forget about the battles that you've had, and you've actually become friends and so on. But Joost and myself, we would have been very good mates, in primary school and secondary school. We played for the same club, Pretoria Junior Rugby Club at that stage, and then went to Pretoria University together. I always played 10, he played 9, and then I couldn't kick the ball far enough for the Blue Bull selectors, so I moved to 9, and then we became rivals, and became rivals to an extent that our friendship, it influenced our friendship, and then towards the end of our careers, we were, try to patch things up again and so on. But US in South Africa certainly, was a great competitor, and probably my biggest or toughest opponent. And then Byron Callagher of New Zealand, he was physically, he was probably the other one, so those two, although scrum half, you probably never in direct competition with the opposite, but Byron and Joost, being the physical players they were, they made sure that you're in a physical contest. So that's probably why the two of them stands out.
And when you look around at the players who are playing these days, is there somebody who you particularly admire?
Oh, look, I think everybody admires Anton de Paun, the French scrum half. I think he's in a class of his own. He brings all the attributes, the flair, the kicking game, the physicality, name it, he's got it, So I think he's probably the scrum half that everybody wants to be.
Now, what I normally do, Dan, is I ask all of my guests to share a funny moment with us from their time with the Springboks. But in your case, I'm actually going to keep that question away. Instead, I'm going to come back to something that we touched on a little bit earlier. You mentioned that you were the Springboks Night Captain. Tell us more about that.
No, that probably started in Nick Mallett's time, when we had our first meeting. We played in Italy. We met in Joburg, and you always had a week in Joburg, and then you move from there. And then in Italy, he announced the team, and I knew I went on the tour as the number 3 scrum half, trying to work your way up into the test team, obviously. But it was Joost and Werner Swanepoel, and then myself on the tour, and team got selected. And back in those days, he might have had conversations with people, but I don't know. But back in those days, you read in the paper, or as I say, even selected for the tour, your name just appeared on the TV, and that's the first you saw about it. And team selections went that way as well. So we had the team meeting. Nick Mallett announced the team, and then, he said afterwards, if anybody wants to chat to him, his door is open, and so on. So we're walking out, and I've got my two compatriots next to me, and Alan Solomons is walking in front, and Nick Mallett, and I'm about 2 yards behind them. And I'm making sure that they hear what I want to say, and I'm saying to whoever was on my left, I said, I just can't believe this. I come on this tour as the number 1 scrum half, and then in the very first selection meeting, I'm not even on the bench. I said, this is just not on, and so on. And then Nick said, and then Nick just turned around and he said, well, let's make you the night captain then, and then it just excelled from there. Then I had to organize, nights for the dirt trackers and all of that, which which was a job in itself. So, and it was the scrum half's job. You know, if you were a reserve scrum half or so on in Contikis and so on, you were the guy that had to organize the fun. I don't know if it's still like that, but that's how it used to be in the old days. Is the second scrum half was the fun keeper, or to keep the vibe going.
Sounds good to me. So what are you up to these days, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, in Ireland it's 22 years now already. Worked for Leinster for 11 years in player and coach development, and started my own business now for the last 6-7 years, Rugby Academy Ireland, where we run a full academy program for wannabe professionals. And creating a pathway for those players where they live. We provide accommodation, full board, and we run an academy program from Monday to Sunday every week for 8 months of the year.
Very cool. Now let's finish off by looking at that trivia question again. In 2016, Alistair Coetzee became Springbok coach. Who did he appoint as his first captain? Do you know the answer, Dan?
I don't think I do.
All right. The answer was Adrian Strauss.
Jeez, I would never have guessed that.
And then as it turns out, Adrian Strauss actually retired at the end of that season, so Alistair had to pick another new captain the following year.
Yeah, I know. Look, and captains are so important, and in Springbok careers, as we alluded to, it's been the downfall of some coaches, it's been the downfall of some teams, and so on. It's such a vital position to have, and I do believe that the coach and the captain must see eye to eye, and they share a lot of things, and I think that's just more evident these days even than in our days. But that now I would never have guessed that.
Dan, let me say it was lovely having you on Front Row Rugby today. An absolute pleasure to listen to those old stories, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Yeah, listen, as Alan Solomon said to me one day, I should write a book, about a lot of different things, but probably too scared to throw myself under the bus. So, but thanks, Peter. No, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it, and best of luck with your career as well.
Last time on Front Row Rugby, I had another former Springbok scrum half on the show, Werner Swanepoel. You can go and watch that video. It's appearing on your screen right now. Next time, I'll have Richard Bands here.